them. Yeah, generally the guardian is trying to look after everybody else. This social element isn't necessarily about them per se. It's about how can I care for my family, my tribe, my community. And they're always going to be more energized and more well if they feel they're doing a good job of that on some level. So thinking about that in the workplace, if you get a guardian who gets pretty engaged with their colleagues and is someone who likes to support people, or rather is someone who takes some of their colleagues under their wing, they become part of their family or extended or otherwise, like, what do you think that means for the workplace for a guardian? How important do you think that makes it?
I think the guardian is a lot of the time is, as you said, takes people under their wing. They want to make other people feel at home fairly quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Make people feel at home, and generally going to care about those they work with. They're going to want those they work with to be essentially, I mean, I don't want to say happy, because that might be making it sound too, it's more practical than that. They want them to feel, I guess, safe and secure. And the way a guardian would judge that in the workplace is by essentially how much, how settled they are, how much alpha is available in the workplace. So how relaxed the workplace is will indicate to a guardian, and arguably to some extent a diplo as well, whether or not the workplace is functioning in a way that they feel comfortable with. And to be really clear on that, is feel less stressed by. They'll feel less stressed in easier going, more alpha, more relaxed environments where things are just chugging along nicely. A nice consistent flow. Cool. So, another really important point as well. One of the ways that we can kind of hack guardian biology, if you will, to coin a sort of contemporary phrase, is by encouraging them to self-care, to take practices or have practices and behaviors that actually indicate to their biology that they're safe. Because what that does is it tells them that, oh, okay, I'm okay. That must mean I'm giving myself things, stuff, energy. That must mean others are okay too. That generally is a way of convincing the body of that as well. So this is why we always say that a guardian needs to have then give, or have then do. Eat some food in the morning, then burn some energy later. Make sure that they're looked after and feeling secure and grounded. Then they can provide support to others. If it's just this constant outflow of energy, there's a limit even to the guardian's ability to maintain that. It's a big limit. They're very resilient, but ultimately they need to feel some reciprocation or some opportunity where they're filling their own cup, if you will, feeling like they're being cared for, looked after on some level. So that can be really powerful. How relevant is that going to be in the workplace, do you think? How could you think about your guardians that you work with, or think about yourself as a guardian if you are? What would it take for you to actually include some self-care in your workday proactively? Any ideas? Oh, none. Do you think a guardian is more likely to take time for themselves without prompt, or do you think a prompt from a friend, a colleague, a peer, to just remind them of the importance of that and just give them the space?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
I think they need a prompt.
Oh. Go again.
I tend to forget breaks and things. I need to be nudged.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So you just need that little reminder from someone who is external to you that it's okay, you can take a break now, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's more about breaking the flow, really. If I'm sort of on a flow, I'd rather keep at it than take that break. Yeah. And what do you think? Do you think with work and stuff, like what's the importance of that break? Why do you think that break for you needs to happen, even if perhaps it interrupts a particular point of flow? Oh, it just breaks mental fatigue. It just actually resets, even though
often I think it doesn't, I don't need it, I'll just get on with this or whatever. But then when I actually do take those breaks, it is sort of like almost like a reset button.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think the other thing I would say with this is, and that's really good point, that you know, ultimately your focus is better post break. So as much as you feel in flow, realistically, to maintain a higher average of focus over the day, taking a step away is really important. And I'd say most of us probably would concur with that, definitely. The other thing I would say on that as well is when it comes to breaks, the other thing is the movement. If you're in a job where you're sat a lot, the importance of breaking from that and having a move, and it doesn't have to be a great deal, I mean, but just regularity is really important. After around an hour of sitting, your muscles actually become, effectively, in a chemistry sense, they become pretty much the same as the diabetics. So your actual muscle tissue start to behave like a diabetic's after a certain amount of sitting. And what does that mean? That means that essentially they're not going to help your body with glucose regulation the same as they would if they were more, if they were being stimulated more regularly. That's going to have a knock-on effect to your resting triglycerides later in the day. And essentially what it means is your metabolism will slow down, to put it really simply. So if we're just sitting consistently for hours on end, which is so common now, obviously in 2022, work-wise, that's more common than the opposite, I would say, or as common at least, but we do a lot of sitting. So it's really important to realize that just moving every 45 minutes or so as a minimum can make a real difference to your health picture long term. So just bear that in mind. And so when you're being encouraged to take breaks, and when those of you doing the encouraging, add in some movement. Say, hey, should we go for a quick walk? Let's go up those stairs. Let's just go up the stairs 3 times. That could make a huge difference if you do that 3 times a day or something, and maybe a couple of tea breaks. Good. But yes, Guardians will need a prompt, definitely. Sweet. And what do we think, Guardians? When you turn up in the morning, and what do you think's important to Guardians to start the day when you first see them? Do we want to just start talking numbers? We need to think about the bottom line here, people. Got to make $1,000 today in the next hour. Do you think that's what's going to turn a Guardian on? What do we reckon?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, there we go. There you go. Straight from the bear's mouth. Yeah, it's what's going to fire up a Guardian to feel more enthused about their presence at work in the day. What do we think?
It's the social interaction you have with your colleagues. You know, how are you? What did you do last night? What have you got on for today?
Yeah, definitely 100%. Thanks, Cindy. And I would say that when I was personal training with Guardians, they often used to ask me, oh, how's Louise? They'd want to know about Louise. So I had to tell them what Louise was up to before we could start the session. Louise is my wife, for those who don't know. So like, they always want to know how your family is, and how your life's going. Like, they're interested in other people. They really are. And actually, by giving them that information, you may have a positive impact on their energy levels and their and then just their general positivity. Cool. Yep. Do a little something for them. So based on what we know of Guardians, what do you think would be a really good way to start the day with Guardians? We've obviously just kind of established that, so a little bit of social. What's like, let's think a little bit more about those top 3 priorities. What do you think, or at least top 2, what do you think a perfect start to the day for a Guardian would be? Isolation? Planning time? What do you reckon?
No, it's
Could be
always
like
nice to see
breakfast.
familiar, yeah, it's always nice to see familiar faces when you get to work, and that people actually care what you did. You know, did you go so and so? How is your grandchildren? You know, and vice versa. Cass, my granddaughter's just started school and she's just gorgeous. But sharing that makes a huge difference for me.
Yeah, it does. It's that easy. It's that easy. Just let them talk about your family with you. I mean, how hard is that to make a little time for a colleague, just being colloquial, just being open, and tell them something about your life? You know, you obviously centre around the people in it. Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Catherine. What about so obviously hard workers, they're very conscientious.
So as we've already heard, they sometimes need a little bit of a nudge to have a break, because generally they'll benefit from other people's awareness of what they're up to, if that makes sense. They do well to have kind of partners in accountability and stuff like that. So what could we be doing as colleagues around 10 o'clock in the morning for our guardians? What would be a nice way to look after them really well at that time of day?
Invite them for a cup of tea or morning tea or something.
Perfect. Yeah,
Do that
it's that
as
easy.
a group.
Yeah, easy. Yeah, doesn't sound too bad, eh? It's going well so far. We've had a chat and a cup of tea. Now, cool. So, and what about lunchtime? What would be say we were in a health and wellbeing program. Imagine that, and you were starting to eat together a bit more often as a result. And that, just go with me here. It's a hypothetical, right? How could you help a guardian at mealtime? Honestly, like just listen, like just put some ideas out there. What do you think is really important for guardians when it comes to eating the right thing? Any ideas?
About what other people are eating, or what recipes that other people have tried that were good.
Totally. Perfect. Exactly right. It's that simple. Make it social. Make that aspect of the program, if we want to call it that, which, let's face it, is everyday life. Let's talk about food in a way that that supports the guardian. So just to remind anyone who doesn't remember, the guardian diet is really high in fiber and vegetables, and we look to reduce their calorie intake in the latter part of the day, but generally they can have a reasonably decent breakfast, and then lunch is a little smaller again, but they can have a reasonable feed at lunch, depending on exactly where they are in the health picture. But ultimately later in the day we want to reduce the calorie density. Now, what do you think happens to a guardian if you go to lunch and say, let's have fish and chips? What do you think that does for a guardian internally? Any ideas? Maybe all of us on some level.
It makes us very happy.
Okay, so what if you're
yuck?
Yeah, right. So what if you're trying to really sort out your diet, Cindy? Say you're working quite hard on it, and then somebody says, let's all go for fish and chips. What happens then?
You say yes.
How does it
I
make you?
say yes because there's that social aspect to it.
Yeah, right.
But you
What
might
if-
be thinking, not sure I should do that.
Yeah. And just as equally, if they said, oh, let's all bring a tapas, one dish each, and we're going to try and center it around diplomat and guardian eating, would you be as inclined to attend that as fish and chips? You might not be as excited about the food, but or maybe you would be. Depends on how good the cooks are.
Yeah, exactly. Who's bringing what?
Who's bringing what? But the what I'm eliciting is, is it really about the fish and chips, or is it about the people?
It's the people.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to the middle of the day and everyone's thinking about what they're doing for lunch, just think about how you could support your guardians to make good choices, because they're not going to be driven as intrinsically as maybe some of us are. So that's to say, if we went for their opposite, the crusader will decide on what their food is and they will eat that food. There won't be any amount of social pressure that will shift that. Really, just doesn't happen. Whereas a diplo or a guardian, and in this case obviously we're focusing on guardian, and a connector to some degree as well, if somebody else is eating whatever, they'll just want to join in. And it's not about the food as such, it's about the element, the kind of coming together and spending time eating together, which actually intuitively is a good thing, because they're acknowledging the importance and the value of that. And it's good for our health to do so. But obviously it's even better for our health to do so if it's the right kind of food at the right time. So yeah, so just bear that in mind. Helping each other make good choices is really, really important. Yeah. Anybody else find that they find it a lot harder to make good choices when others are making bad ones around them? Is that pretty much a given? Yeah. So ultimately, for those of us who are more outwardly focused, more other focused, that phenomena is going to be most acute. So the more we can do to support the guardian to make good choices in that way, as a friend, as a colleague, the better. Sweet. Good stuff. So that's our guardian, ladies and gents. Next up, the connector. Any questions on guardian before we move on? Any observations? Be supportive, take time, listen to them, tell them a story, invite them out for healthy food, make it easier to think about them maybe when.
I growl at Kath when she goes to the vending machine.
Good. There you go. Jiminy Cricket, we can call you. Everybody needs a little Crusader conscience now and then. Conscience. Good. Okay, well, next up is the connector. Now, obviously, we've got a connector, a new connector, fresh connector in Laura, but I think only one on the call. We haven't got too many in this team. Now, social. What do we notice on this slide? Important? Pretty important, eh?
Yep.
Yeah. And obviously we see mine is number one, social is a close second. There's a huge link between the two. Social will often support a connector mind, but they'll sometimes withdraw from it when they don't feel 100%. So this is really important. So what do we know about connectors in terms of energetically? Are they early birds or night owls? Who knows? What do we reckon? Anyone got any idea? Anyone remember?
Is it early bird?
Early-ish, yep. They're not the earliest of birds, but they're pretty close. And different connectors as well. I find near a 150, they can be very much an early bird actually. Yeah, when they're feeling good, and particularly in summer, they'll be quite responsive to the sun. As we know, the sun is really important to our connectors, or daylight more generally, I should say. Good. So, and place as well. Place is their third priority. Now, what do you think informs the energy or the vibe of a place most to a connector? Is it the decor? Is it the EMF? Electronic magnetic fluctuations? That's not the right word, but we'll go with it. It's actually filled, but that would have just confused everybody. Yes.
Is there a social aspect to it?
Of course, yeah. So when we talk about diplomats, we talk about environment being number one or place being number one. There we are looking at people, but we're looking also at the physical, very much the physical as well. And there's an element of truth around this for connectors. Ultimately, it's about positivity. Ultimately, it's about positivity, or you could say sunniness in a very literal sense. The sunnier the vibe, the healthier they'll feel. So that's in colors. There needs to be brightness there, literal brightness, and it needs to be coming through in the energy of the people too, and very much so. So the people's energy being positive is really, really important to the connector. This can be quite hard to achieve in a workplace because obviously there's pressure, there's change, there's stress, moving goalposts, there's all sorts going on. So maintaining a positive energy isn't always easy in a workplace. And this can have a really negative impact on our connectors. So just bear that in mind, that they'll go best if, like literally they'll outdo themselves if things feel positive. So it's really important to hold that in your mind, keep things energized, because they're like a puppy dog and they want positive and attention, basically, in a way. Really good problem solvers. They love to they need to verbalize in this, but they're really good problem solvers. So they're always seeking variety and a kind of challenge for the mind to overcome. Yeah, and they like to solve their own problems as well. So if you ever have a connector and you're trying to support them, it needs to be support, not too directly trying to sort of shepherd them into something. They need to feel like they're in control of how they're making changes and stuff like this. This is quite important. They love to have fun. They love to create fun, and they love to bring people together, different aspects of the workplace, or bringing the workplace, maybe connecting them with other workplaces. They'll do this sort of thing really well. They're temperament will naturally lean towards that. Yep, we've talked about that a little bit. You can make anything less stressful by making it more fun, to be quite straightforward. And to be honest, just doing stuff together, like saying, let's do a task together, can make all the difference. They'll feel instantly motivated when they feel like they've got a comrade or 4 or 104. They love the more the better. So they're very, very connectory, funny old thing. They want to connect with people. They want to connect people to each other. They get oxytocin by watching this. They don't need to be hugged. Sometimes just seeing a hug can be enough for a connector, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for oxytocin. So not dissimilar to our guardians in a way, right? Bit of overlap there. So with that in mind, how do you think we should start a day with a connector? What shouldn't we do at the first thing of the day with a connector? And yet I reckon loads of us do this. Any ideas? Come in on a Monday, you've had a great weekend, and you didn't want to go to sleep on Sunday night because it was such a good weekend, and you thought, oh God, I've got to go back to work. What shouldn't we do with the connector on a Monday morning?
I can see your brain thinking, Laura. You must have something in there.
No, I think I'm getting confused with activator things, because I know that for activator, your Monday morning your energy is the highest, but I've got to switch back to connector thinking now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like, definitely the activator is everything at the beginning. Definitely with connectors, their energy. What do you think most informs connectors' energy? And either speaking from your own experience, Laura, or just from what we've learned in the last couple of months, like, what do you think would most likely affect a connector's energy?
You're being isolated, or you've got to go do something straight away without sort of checking in with people first, or doing any sort of brainstorming or teamwork first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just essentially people. Like, their mind is designed to focus, to switch on, to become literally more resources in the brain will become available if they've interacted with someone. It's just how they work. And connectors are masters of presence. Like, they're really good at being present in the moment when they're well. And why is that so important? That presence is like a superpower that's into an individual. It allows them to dial into a person or people, so they can be really focused on, oh, tell me the story about this, and like really interacting in a really like focused environment on the person. That's what makes them so good at connecting, right? Because it makes people feel cared for, makes people feel heard, feel valued, like you're actually interested in them because they actually are. Now, obviously what that means is, what that's done is, the way they've developed the brain, the way their brain is developed is in such a way that it won't switch on in the absence of people as readily, because it needs to feel the hyper focus that a person gives, if that makes sense. To make that the peak in their mental energy, it has to be the peak. It can't be a peak when there's no people, because otherwise we kind of have this range, this kind of this relativity to how their body is going to produce energy, if that makes sense. So that is to say that if they were as energetic when there was no one there as they are when someone's there, how would that make people special to them? Does that make sense? So they're just hardwired to light up around people. So that's not to say they can't work alone. Of course they can. They can do. They've got quite good endurance, and some connectors can be very, very, very mentally gifted, and as a result, but with the right amount of social in their lives, they'll be able to work alone for bouts, but they'll always do better to have interaction throughout the day, if that makes sense. And it really depends on the individual as to just how much they're going to need, but they're all going to need a fair amount, if you will. Good. So the first thing we might do with a connector then is just obviously have a natter, right? So it's around 9:30, and the connector's had enough of admin right now on Tuesday morning. They've had enough, and they're getting a bit restless, and they're a bit bored in their office. Someone's not in their office today. Normally they've got 2 other people in the office, and they haven't turned up. One's gone sick and the other's at home because of Omicron. So they're on their own in there. And at 9:30, they run out of the office, and they go, Cass, 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 have you seen this on the TV? And Cass like mid-focus. How does that feel for everybody involved, firstly? And how do we handle that? You reckon? Any ideas? To make that connector stay in flow, how do we handle that best? And there's no one answer to this. There's probably heaps. But we're looking for some.
Give me 5 minutes. I just need to finish this.
That might be good. That might be good. Definitely. No, definitely can't see any problems with that response.
But it takes only a few minutes to interact with somebody, and then you can both get on with it.
Yeah, there's that too. There is that too. Yeah. Good. What do you think you don't want to do?
Tell them you're not interested, or go away, I'm busy, or
Completely ignore them.
Yeah, just completely ignore them, definitely. But also, perhaps that would be better than a full-on, I'm snowed under, you're interrupting my work, I'm never going to get through this stuff if you don't stop talking to me. Like that would be about the worst response. However, in the workplace, before all this PH360 stuff, obviously there's a level of politeness so that we don't do that kind of thing. But if I said to you, like, just reiterating this importance of positivity when we're interacting with connectors, like, how many people would think they'd be well within their rights in the workplace to just say, hang on, I cannot talk right now? Like, who would think that would be a fair response, even if unnecessary, in the workplace? Who would think that'd be a fair response?
Yeah, that'd be fair. You're turning it into a positive. Oh yeah, that looks really cool. Shall we meet up for morning tea, and you can show me over a cup of tea or something like that?
Yeah, see, I think that's a really, I think that's the best response, is like, yep, let's go and have a tea break together at 10. Absolutely. But yeah, it's a fair response, but at the same time, it's like keeping the language really positive will make all the difference. So if you were to say, I can't deal with you right now, or something like that, or I just need to focus, or something that just feels brusque, and what do we know about connectors as well? How good are they at reading cues, body language? On a scale of 1 to 10, where do we think they land? Any ideas?
Be quite high, because mind is just, I think the mind aspects are like number one.
Do you remember what part of the mind of the connector? Does anyone remember what part of the mind of the connector dominates? No?
No.
So the occipital lobe is where they spend a lot of their time. They even think in images, and for those of us who do that, I thought everybody did. Turns out, not so much. So they even think in imagery. So everything is about imagery and visual. They process the world around them in that way. So body language and facial expression, like I can tell you now from my own experience, I can pick up on the smallest twitch of a side of a mouth or a drop of an eye, and I will know exactly what someone, or I'll have a few ideas on what someone is thinking, and then all I need is context, and I'll be able to make a reasonable understanding of what they're thinking in their head. And I'm a 145, so I'm not even quite a connector. So, but that's the reality, because there's this occipital dominance, and they're people focused. So the ability to read expressions will be quite useful to someone who wants to be able to connect with anyone and everyone at any one time, at any given moment. So yes, that is like one of their superpowers. So yeah, so they'll know if you're being genuine, authentic with your body language and your visual, what your face is telling them as well. So bear that in mind. If you're trying to give them a positive sort of retort or response, and your face betrays you, and then you get a funny reaction, that might be why. That might be why. So just be really mindful of your facial expressions. Cool. They do love a hug. They get lots of oxytocin from hugs, laughter, fun, being relaxed. Like, they are are masters at this stuff, and it might feel like, well, how does that work in the workplace? Well, the irony is there'll also be really big team players who want to contribute and are very conscientious about their role and responsibility, and often they can actually have I've seen quite a lot of connectors who have quite a leadership presence as well, because they're enthusiastic and they care about people, so they can be really, really amazing in the workplace. So all we got to do is provide them with just enough social so that they can focus, basically. Good. Any questions on Connector? What a fun bunch, eh? How good are they? Everybody needs a few of these around. Definitely. Brilliant networkers. Good at sales and relationship management. Like, they can really, really thrive in that space. HR. Lots of different jobs. Very, very versatile. Good. Finally, our sensor. Now, these guys, they don't socialize, so that's the end of the lesson. No, I'm joking. They do socialize, of course, but they are probably arguably least needy when it comes to social, for want of a less offensive way of putting it. They're less inclined towards social, especially en masse. Like, they do better to have tight relationships with 3 or 4 people and do quiet nights in. They're as I say, generally, they're not going to trend towards large amounts of interaction or like partying or all that kind of thing. And if they do, it won't do them a lot of good. I can say that from experience. Often they'll, as people do, they'll follow the culture that surrounds them and kind of give in to peer pressure, even though they know internally it isn't good for them, but it really doesn't do them a lot of good. The other thing they're really bad with is the cold. Like, we need to look after our sensors in terms of temperature. This is where the environmental aspect for them comes in, is very much to do with temperature and noise and light, anything that will overstimulate them, which ultimately cold does that, overstimulates your nervous system. So yes, so that's our sensor. Mind is number 1. So they can be quite aware of this stuff, and they can be very, obviously they're very sensory, and that's not just external, it's internal. Oh, there's a spelling mistake there. Oopsie. It's internal. So they have a great sense of what's going on with their bodies and their minds. So as a result, they tend to know what's good for them. So they tend to steer away. If they're in balance, they'll tend to steer away from heavy social and too much stimulation quite easily. But from a work perspective, I'd say for the sensor, it's almost like the opposite of the connector. Oops. Yeah, because they're stressed by all this stimulus, noise, too many people. So what do we want to do for a sensor first thing in the morning, regardless of whether they're a night owl or an early bird? What do we want to do for them in the morning, do you think? Compared to the connector, I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Reduce stimulus.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Pretty much true every minute of the day, Steph, to be honest. What as well, if I was a connector and I was working on my ability to connect with anyone, and it was 9:30 and I was on my own in the office and I had this sudden urge to go out and speak to someone, who should I probably not speak to?
An activator.
Oh, no. Why an activator?
Far too much energy and stimulus.
Oh, you mean if there was an activator near a sensor? Is that what you mean? Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah. So it might be a good idea to say, hey, activator, mate, let's go outside. I imagine that happens a lot in the workplace. Certainly happened in mine a fair bit. But yeah, no, that's right. Like, basically, we want to move the connectors and activators away from sensors until they're good and ready. And again, it's not like my sister's a sensor and we get on like a house on fire. So despite these differences, it's not that they can't gel. They absolutely can, but they'll gel a lot better if we understand each other's needs, right? And that's what this is all about. So this very mind-driven sensor, lack of logic, how do you think that plays out in the workplace? Like, where do you think that where do you think the sense of stress could come from in the workplace, other than a noisy activator?
Chaos.
Any kind of chaos, yeah?
Mm.
What about in terms of tasking? How do you think you need to task a sensor? Do you think you need to do
clearly so they know exactly what they have to do?
Yes, absolutely. Do you want to brainstorm that with a sensor?
No, they probably wouldn't.
No, probably not. They're very creative. Asking them to think about how to work through a task. I wouldn't say solve a problem because that isn't really their skill, but work through a task. You could definitely include them in formulating a strategy, but you wouldn't necessarily think about group problem solving with the sensor. So they could definitely contribute to a strategy, though. I would say that because they've got an element of a strategic mind, much like the Crusader. Yep. They love to learn. They can hold a lot in their heads. Their brain burns a ridiculous amount of energy. It's non-stop. They're just always calculating, thinking, unconsciously, consciously. There's a lot going on in that head. So we just need to support that and allow it to have essentially have like its own space. They actually will be quite as well affected by EMF as well. So if you've got some sensors who are really struggling at home and are stressed, they may even be sensitive to some really subtle sort of stimulants in the air in the workspace. So this is something to think about as well. Just as a side note, aircon, high amounts of EMS, so like lots of Wi-Fi devices and things like that, or if you're near certain electronics or RF output, believe it or not, that will impact them, especially if they're sensitive already. So having a space for them where they know they can get away from that could be useful as well. Cool. The more relaxed they are, the more that creative side will come out, and then they become, that's when they become real geniuses. Actually, can really help you solve problems and sort of overcome problems in the workplace. Good, but they're pretty straightforward in a social sense. We need to let them focus. We need to help them stay on task, because they're so good at processing that they can't always switch off to unwanted stimuli. So we need to make sure that we help them manage that in the workplace. Keep them warm all the time. Don't let them get cold. They'll literally just disintegrate. If they get cold too often, their metabolism will just kind of race, and they'll get really, really lightweight really quick if they're regularly exposed to cold. And what will come with that is stress and anxiety. It's really amazing. Yep, they need independence. They don't need to be working in collaborative office spaces. Everybody in the last sort of 10 years, there's been a big push towards more collaborative and open workspaces for one reason or another. And there's a lot of positives for that, but obviously for the sensor, this could actually be a negative thing. So we need to respect that and make sure we're aware of it. Yes, they do. If you're going to have a discussion with a sensor, if you want to engage with them, if it's about something relevant to work or something you know they're interested in, then that will be the right way to go. If you've got a sensor in the office and you want to connect with them, because they still want to be part of the team. They want to work alone as part of a team. Which sounds a bit strange, but they don't really they don't want to be isolated in the purest, deepest sense. That isn't the case. They actually want to feel like they belong and connect. It's really important to them. And that's what's a bit of a juxtaposition, because they often get left out because they are introverted. But we need to create a really kind of, we need to be really aware of how we make them feel included, even when they're being independent, which is an art form. But if you wanted to connect with them, talk about stuff that's stimulating to them, get to know their real likes, dislikes, and sort of hobbies and stuff, and you'll get a really good conversation. And always provide certainty. Like, I've seen this play out really acutely with a couple of individuals, and I've seen the impact, the stress it can cause when someone doesn't really understand what's being asked of them. They don't really understand their place in the team, or the impact their task / role is going to have, and perhaps even how they're going to execute. They don't have that information, and in that they just get super stressed. So yeah, just bear that in mind. And if you're trying to support them as a colleague, keeping a grasp on where they fit in could be a powerful thing too. So thinking about where the sensor's contribution really lies. If you've got a better grasp on that than them, because they might not see the bigger picture as well as others. They can if they're given information, but they need quite a lot. But they won't grasp things using their kind of intuition so much. They need that certainty. So others might be better at saying, yeah, but this is where it fits in, providing a little bit more clarity for them. So just bear that in mind. That's about what that's a really important thing that you could support a sensor with. Good. But they're not going to need you to go up and make them cups of tea. They're not going to need you to tell them how to be healthy per se. They'll take the information from us direct and then they'll use it. But they'll still want to feel included. So although they might not want to come for a cup of tea, still give them the invite. It's up to them. But don't be offended if they decide not to come. That's probably the biggest thing I'd say. Good. So that's social team. Hopefully there's been some good information there on how to interact with your colleagues and looking at the health types from other people's perspective. We're going to keep growing this stuff over the coming months. So don't worry, you're going to get more resources to help you stay in tune with it. But now I'm excited to say it's time for us to get some recognition. I know a few of you have maybe have got busy as the call's gone on, but if you could just give us a few more moments of your attention, that'd be fantastic. Because I just want to recognize a few people who've done really well in the challenge so far and in the whole program so far. And unfortunately, a couple of them aren't on the call. But I would like to, I know Kate, we've got one of your clients that we're going to celebrate. We've also got, who I think, is it Diana, the other one? And then obviously we're going to also celebrate Laura. We're going to talk to Laura. So how are you going, Laura? Tell us what's been happening since we last spoke. Have you continued on with your successes?
Yeah, been getting the movement more of a regular part of my week and part of my day. And I think something that Bex really helped me with was working on the why. So why I should be doing movement every day, or doing something to make me feel good. So that's really helped. Coming back to that. So started carrying on with my yoga and running and walking, and started doing some sort of shorter, like high intensity workouts as well, which brings the energy up. One thing I've just made a note of is what you've said this morning about the regular movement. I spend a lot of my day sitting at my computer, so it's a bit scary to hear that your body starts to respond in the way that you might do if you're a diabetic. So that's something I want to start doing a bit, even if it's just a little bit of regular movement, going for a walk around. But it's another thing that's really helped me with the movement is sending a text to Bex at the end of the week. So just letting you know that this is what I've done, puts the accountability on me, and makes me think, I don't want to text Bex and say, I haven't done anything this week. So it just gives a bit more oomph to get moving. So
love it. That's
worked
good.
really
That's
well.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks, Laura. No mean feat. Making big changes to your exercise schedule. I know it's going to have positive impact. So we'll make sure that we keep supporting you and keep driving those stats in the way that you want them to go. Just on the sitting piece, obviously we don't want to be harbingers of doom, it's all bad news in here sometimes, but it really isn't. It's really straightforward. Even just getting up and doing 5-star jumps could be the difference between that muscular kind of laziness and it being a little bit more toned, a bit more tonic is the correct word actually. And that basically means it's alive and it actually takes part in your physiology rather than kind of slumping and falling asleep. So and everyone, that applies not just to Laura, that applies to all of us. So bear that in mind. Sitting is a killer. Believe it or not, it's an insidious little bugger. So whatever you can to counteract it is good. Awesome. Thank you so much. I just want to say as well to Sherry, I was with Sherry at the beginning of her journey with us, and obviously I know that Sherry's been on a really big personal wellness journey as well. So I just want to recognize you for committing to it to another level again. And I hope that I know the program, you've learned a lot about how to
sort of double down on what you've done leading up to getting in contact with us. So good luck with that, Sherry. I know you're moving on, so good luck with that. And I just want to say, you know, it's a massive effort that you've put in over the last couple of years. So long may it continue, and I hope you really enjoy the benefits that it brings, that in terms of quality of life. So yeah, thanks for taking part.
Thanks very much for that, Chris.
All right, Sherry, thank you. And also Cindy, I know you're tentatively sitting on a couple of wins, so I can either, you can jump in and just sort of offer a sentence, or I can put it together for you if you want, mate. Up to you. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Cool.
I have found that, yeah, unexpectedly I've lost some inches and I've lost some weight, and that wasn't, you know, that was gradual, which is great. So I was really surprised last time I measured myself or weighed myself. But I've also got back in the habit of regular exercise. I'm exercising every day, which is great. And as I said to you yesterday, I haven't fully embraced the food diary, but I'm eating more veggies, which has been really beneficial for me and for my health. And I'm much more conscious of what I'm eating and making sure it's a quality that's going into my body. So yeah, I've got lots of positives from the last month or so.
Awesome, that's excellent. I mean, I think it's really cool to think, you know, obviously we had Christmas there where it kind of stopped us really racing at it from the beginning, and I'm really chuffed that I feel like maybe that was actually perfect, because it allowed a few of you to just get your head around the concepts, and then in a new year, a natural sort of point for change, come in and sort of have a little stab at it without even going mad, you know, just a few changes here, a few changes there. So yeah, it's really cool that you've seen quietly, Cindy, perhaps even against expectation, you've seen those changes, and so that's really good news. And like I've said to you, like you don't need to be sort of chucking the kitchen sink at it per se. Like, it's almost better to add in a change, get the reward, add in a change, get the reward, add in a change. If you stagnate, then it's like, okay, what can I do now? Then we might need a few changes together. But if it's going in the right direction, just keep doing that, and eventually you'll get where you want to be. That's how it works. Awesome, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Cool. Next up, then, I just want to say congratulations to Mandy. In our early in a couple of weeks ago, we announced we were going to do a couple of prizes, and we just wanted to recognise Mandy because she's against some really tough obstacles. She's making some changes, and Kate, her coach, has really supported her really well in that way. So I just want to say well done to both of you. So we are going to send Mandy out some equipment that will just help her preparing food at home. Really straightforward stuff, nothing too fancy, but hopefully we hope it makes a difference, and we hope to see you on a call in the future, Mandy. Hopefully you watch us in retrospect, and we can hear how you're putting that to good use. So yeah, just Mandy, well done, and keep going. We're with you. Also, and there's lots of claps going around the Zoom screens if you haven't noticed. And then there's Karen, who's been working with Diana. Now, I don't want to put any specifics on people's successes without them being present and being here to do that for themselves. But there's been a significant sort of change for Karen, really significant. I dare say those of you who work with Karen around the offices will have seen it for yourselves. But yeah, there's some really good traction coming from there. Is there anything you'd like to add for Karen, Diana?
I just love that she really decided and make a decision that she's focusing on herself, and she became really intuitive and really listens to her body. So I'm really proud of her for that. She actually takes time now to stop and say, well, hang on, I'm doing this for me and for my health and for my longevity. And you can just say that that decision has been made very, very clearly and strong. So she's very motivated, and it's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, like I say, like Karen's had a really good start to the new year using that intuition and putting in some effort and some changes, making some commitments to herself, and obviously with a bit of help from the app and a fair amount of help from Diana as well, I'm sure. So
So, yep, that's a few people that have really sort of stood out for us. There are others, obviously, who are taking part and making changes, and we look forward to hearing from them in the future. I know, Kath, you've embraced the program really well too, and we just want to thank you for that. And as I said to you before, at the beginning of the call, we've heard from other people that that's going around your office. So that's what we want, and we just want to sort of, our long-term goals in any organisation are to find who champions might be in the future to really spearhead our presence in the offices and in the organisation in a wider sense. And so we're always looking to who is in that position. So those of you who've been taking such a good part, and for those of you who are inclined to do so, that's something that we could be looking at later down the track, is just actually engaging with you more on a one-to-one level, perhaps with some extra benefits around that, but also to see how we could utilize your energy, your fervor, your commitment to yourself firstly, and then growing that into something that commits to the workplace and has influence there. So if that sounds like something that later on down the track you might be interested in, any of you, make a mental note of it, maybe express that to your coaches. Awesome, thanks, Kath, we really appreciate that. Make a mental note, let your coaches know if you're someone who would be interested in working with us closely to help keep proliferating the influence in the workplace. Otherwise, most importantly of all, look after yourselves, and we're not going to see you now for anywhere between 3 and 4 weeks. This is our last call where we're weekly. We're going to move now to a monthly schedule, and I know we're over time, and if you need to go, please team, feel free. But just a last couple of minutes to say we're going to be in touch with you every 3 or 4 weeks. That doesn't mean we won't be in touch via email. We'll keep sending you content, and we'll keep giving you opportunities to engage with new and also engage with the old content. And we hope to be in touch with you again in a bigger way in the future as well. Can we put up the reply of last week, please? Replay of last week. Yeah, last week is up on the website. But what we're going to do is I'll cut the video from the first half of today. Will be combined with last week's session, and that will be one video. So that'll all occur on one spot online. So you'll be able to sort of, be able to call for that. Thanks, Cherie. Thank you so much. So yeah, we'll be once a month, but the sessions will be really interactive. So we're really going to need you guys there. I know the people on the call, the stalwarts, and we've had you guys for most of the calls and really appreciate that. But we do really hope that we can actually increase the number of people on the call. We're going to take a couple of steps to work towards that. And for those of you who are leaving the program, that doesn't mean you have to stop being in touch with your coaches and stop being in touch with this information. Please consider that as an option, because we do want to know, we do want to see you keep growing your wins and your successes, and get to a point where basically health and well-being is just a thing in your life, and maybe you start to share it with others. Sweet, awesome. Thanks so much so far, team. We look forward to seeing you in a month or so, 3 weeks or so. And yeah, stay lucky, stay well, stay committed.
See you.
Thanks, guys. Unmute yourself, say goodbye.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Hey, team.